Hey guys, tonight we're going to ancient Egypt, not the pyramids and golden coffins version, but the slow, dusty, quietly magical life of a regular person just trying to make it through the day without being trampled by a donkey or mildly cursed by a neighbor. You wake up before sunrise, on a simple mat laid across the flat rooftop of your family's mud brick house. The air is cool, surprisingly cool, actually, considering it's Egypt. But that's how the desert works. The stars are still faintly visible, but the eastern horizon is warming to a dusky lavender. You blink against the breeze and hear the distant bleating of goats, the splash of someone filling water jars down by the canal, and your own joints making some rather judgmental cracking sounds. There's no alarm clock, no rooster, just a kind of collective agreement that when the sky turns pinkish-orange, it's time to start pretending you like early mornings. You roll off your mat, stretch your back, somewhat successfully, and duck inside the house. The air inside smells faintly of old barley, clay, and a hint of yesterday's dinner. Not unpleasant. Just earthy. Your mother is already awake, as always, stoking a small clay hearth in the corner. She greets you with a grunt and hands you a pot of gritty, lukewarm barley beer. Breakfast of champions. There's no coffee, so this slightly fermented, porridge-thin beer is your consolation prize. You sip slowly, trying not to think about how long it's been since the jug was cleaned. Now comes hygiene. If you were hoping for minty toothpaste and a splash of lemon-scented hand soap, well, welcome to 1300 BCE. You grab a twig, already frayed at one end, and dip it into a small dish of powdered ash, crushed rock and natron salt. This ancient toothpaste is great at removing plaque and, coincidentally, enamel. You scrub your teeth dutifully, each scrape reminding you of the slow erosion of your molars. Still, oral hygiene matters. The wealthier folks even throw in powdered burnt eggshells and a bit of myrrh, but you're keeping it classic. Historians still argue whether these early dental routines were more ceremonial or genuinely effective, but either way, you're getting your daily dose of mouth grit. Once your teeth are clean, you splash your face with water from the jar by the door, left to settle overnight so the silt's gone mostly to the bottom. It's cold and refreshing, and it helps you look slightly less like a sand-blasted statue. You smear a bit of castor oil onto your arms and face, partly to keep the skin from cracking, partly because your aunt swears it wards off flies. Not the worst theory. The sun's starting to rise properly now, and the flat rooftops of your village glow like baked bread in the early light. A neighbor's goat bleats insistently. Somewhere, a rooster decides to wake up late. You pull on your simple linen tunic, which was white at some point but now proudly carries the marks of honest labor, and probably a lentil stewing guide. You sling your reed basket over your back and squint toward the fields. It's still early, and the air clings to that rare window of pleasant coolness before the sun gets personal. The dirt road leading out of the village is already alive with quiet movement, neighbors trudging alongside donkeys, a few early-rising priests mumbling hymns to Ra, and one sleepy merchant arguing with a goose. The goose is winning. Your sandals make an unhelpful, suck-pop sound with each step in the soft mud, and you pause to fix the strap that keeps slipping. You'll tell yourself you'll repair it tonight, but we both know that's a lie. At least you remembered your hat this time, a woven palm frond number that offers modest shade and absolute fashion irrelevance. Arriving at the field, you take a moment to just stand and listen. A chorus of croaking frogs somewhere nearby. The flap of an egret's wings. The distant rhythmic thud of someone already working the plow. It's oddly peaceful. Maybe that's because no one has invented email yet. Your family shares this patch of flood-fertilized earth with 2 other households, and the land's still rich from the last inundation. You eye the silt, black, moist, practically humming with potential, and start loosening the topsoil with your wooden hoe. It's not a glamorous job, but it's deeply satisfying in the dig hole, plant seed, hope sort of way. You're planting emmer wheat today. Again. It's the backbone of nearly every meal, but even you admit it's about as thrilling as watching a pyramid weather. Still, you settle into the rhythm, dig, drop, cover, step. Dig, drop, cover, step. A nearby friend grunts hello, wiping his brow with a cloth that used to be white linen before agriculture got involved. During a short break, you squat beneath a palm tree, reaching into your bag for a lump of dried onion and some fig cake your sister packed. It's chewy and strangely satisfying. You sip from a leather water skin and use your tunic to wipe a bead of sweat off your temple, then flick away a beetle that seems entirely too confident for its size. And here comes the most thrilling part of the morning, brushing flies away with a papyrus frond. You swat without really looking, your gaze scanning the horizon. Across the field, a priest from the nearby temple walks slowly along the embankment, clutching a small idol of Osiris and muttering prayers to encourage a bountiful season. You nod respectfully as he passes, and he mutters something about hippos and the wrath of Sobek. Historians still argue whether these agricultural blessings were meant to appease the gods or just gave bored clergy something to do before lunch. Either way, the priest seems very committed. You return to planting, and your mind wanders, what if this year, the flood doesn't come? Or comes too much? Last season, one of your neighbors lost half their crop when a crocodile decided their irrigation channel was the perfect nesting ground. Not exactly something you can plan. You make it back to the village with the grace of a sunburned lizard in sandals, sweaty, squinting, and clutching your empty water skin like it might somehow refill itself out of pity. The shadows are short now, and the village hums with the slow, sticky pace of the noonday lull. Even the flies seem a little sluggish, floating in lazy spirals instead of their usual military dive-bombing patterns. You duck into your home, where the clay walls offer a bit of blessed coolness, and plop down onto a reed mat with an appreciative grunt. Your mother hands you a bowl of lentil stew, thick with garlic and maybe a few shreds of dried fish if she was feeling generous. It's simple food, but it fills your stomach and lifts your mood. You dip a torn piece of flatbread into the bowl and sigh contentedly. Across the room, your little brother is doing his best to look unimpressed while he eats, as if stew has somehow personally offended him. After the meal, it's time to take refuge in the shade of a nearby sycamore tree, the one with that strange bump on the trunk that someone swears looks like the goddess Hathor. You stretch out on a woven mat, head resting on a folded cloth that's mostly flat, and take a moment to just exist. A breeze stirs the leaves above, and a faint chorus of bees buzz somewhere out of sight. This is your hour of reprieve. You've earned it. As you settle into the dappled shade, a neighbor joins you, a wiry older man with a laugh like gravel being poured into a jar. He offers you a fig, which you accept with a nod of thanks, and soon you're both trading idle observations about the heat, the flies, and that one guy who claims to have invented a snake-proof sandal. The conversation drifts toward animals, which, in this village, are equal parts companions and chaos agents. Someone recently spotted a baboon near the canal, probably escaped from a temple. You joke about training it to fetch water. Your neighbor insists it's a divine sign. Historians still argue whether these animals were actual pets, spiritual intermediaries, or just unusually sassy roommates. You both laugh, and he tells you a story about the time a priest mistook a piglet for a sacred relic in a foggy early morning. It did not go well. Somewhere nearby, a group of young children plays a game involving pebbles and dramatic shrieking. You remember playing that same game, though the rules were always suspiciously fluid. You smile as one kid tries to declare victory by simply yelling louder than the others. A classic strategy. Now the sun shifts, throwing new slants of light across the courtyard, and you hear a soft bell from the direction of the small shrine at the edge of town. That means it's time for the midday prayer, short, simple, and mostly a way to ask the gods not to melt you before sunset. You don't go to the big temple today, it's a bit of a walk and your legs are currently operating at decorative. Instead, you wander over to your cousin's school near the scribes. You drift along the baked path that runs past the market square, the clay beneath your sandals radiating just enough warmth to remind you that it's still very much summer. The narrow alleys are beginning to stir again after the midday stillness. Vendors sweep dust from under their stalls in slow arcs, occasionally stopping to fan themselves with bits of woven mat or slap at flies with heroic futility. The market is your favorite place to loiter, especially when you don't technically need anything. The smells alone are worth the trip: cumin and coriander from the spice merchant's table, pungent blue cheese airing itself out like it owns the street, and something deeply suspicious coming from the fishmonger's basket. You make a mental note not to investigate that last one too closely. You're here for one reason: the date seller's table. Or more accurately, to see whether the date seller's son has managed to keep that thieving monkey out of the baskets this time. Spoiler: he has not. The monkey, draped in a necklace of stolen garlic cloves and looking entirely unrepentant, hisses at you from a rooftop ledge. Below, the seller waves a stick in the air, muttering a string of creative threats that would make a priest blush. You offer to help, mostly because watching someone chase a monkey with a stick is exactly the level of entertainment you needed this afternoon. While the chaos unfolds above, you help yourself to a small handful of half-bruised dates from the least protected tray. The seller sees you but is too distracted to care. You grin and toss a piece of dried fig up toward the monkey, who snatches it mid-air like a temple-trained acrobat. Honestly, someone should put that thing on stage. As the monkey scampers off victorious, trailing bits of garlic and general resentment, a group of children nearby claps and laughs. One of them whispers that the monkey is the reincarnation of a failed scribe. You nod solemnly, as if that makes total sense. Wandering on, you pass the textile stall run by a stern older woman who can tell your tunic's thread count from across the square. She eyes you like a hawk judging fabric crimes, then softens as you compliment her new lotus-dyed shawl. She even lets you touch it. Briefly. With one finger. While supervised. The stall next door is run by a cheerful man who sells carved amulets, frogs, ankhs, and one slightly off-model scarab that looks more like a startled potato. You browse while he explains that the amulets are guaranteed to ward off scorpions, jealous neighbors, and minor curses. You buy one, more for the story than the spell, and tuck it into your satchel. As you make your way toward the far end of the market, a thin woman in priestess robes approaches, holding a shallow bronze bowl filled with what looks like dried reeds. You recognize her as a dream interpreter from the House of Life temple. She offers you one of the reeds and asks, "Have you dreamt of flying crocodiles recently?" You blink in tea. You follow your nose to the bakery. Well, bakery might be a generous word. It's more of a soot-stained clay shed with a couple of brick ovens and a baker who always looks like he's just lost a wrestling match with a flour sack. His name is Huey, and you've known him since you were both small enough to ride donkeys without touching the ground. These days, he rides sarcasm and half-burnt bread instead. Late again, Huey says as you approach. The gods weep for your punctuality. You shrug. The gods weep for your crusts. He snorts and gestures to a cooling rack made from woven palm fronds. Round loaves rest there, golden and cracked, some marked with dots or patterns to indicate their ingredients: plain wheat, honeyed barley, or the slightly adventurous ones with wild dates mixed in. You reach for a warm loaf and give it a light squeeze. Perfect. Still soft in the middle, crisp around the edge. Huey hands you a second loaf, this one flatter and marked with a spiral. For your mother, he says. Tell her it's not burnt, it's spiritually toasted. You promise to deliver the message word for word. Nearby, a younger apprentice tries and fails to coax a fire from a pile of half-damp reeds. Smoke puffs out in sad little clouds, and someone mutters a prayer to Ta, patron god of craftsmen, who probably has better things to do than micromanage kindling. You offer the boy a tip: dry dung lights better than reeds, and he looks at you like you've just handed him the secrets of the universe. Historians still argue whether baking duties were a male or female domain in villages like yours. But here, at least, it's clear, bread is everybody's business. You wander home through quieter streets now. The buzz of the market has mellowed into a sleepy hum. Someone is singing in the distance, something repetitive and rhythmic, a harvest tune, maybe, or just someone trying to annoy their goats into going back to the pen. At your family's courtyard, your mother is pounding something in a stone mortar while your brother pretends not to be stealing figs behind her back. You toss him a piece of bread like a bone to a well-trained dog, and he lights up with a grin. Your mother accepts the loaves with a nod of approval and a muttered blessing to Batet, goddess of home, comfort, and general household chaos. As she works the bread into dinner, a little stew, maybe, or a spread made from lentils and herbs, you take on the next family task, washing. Specifically, scrubbing out the family's clay storage jars with sand and river water. It's tedious work, but you enjoy it in the same way people enjoy peeling sunburns or popping lotus seeds, strangely satisfying, mildly meditative. A neighbor leans over the courtyard wall, trading a few jokes and offering a sour plum as a peace offering for borrowing your family's pestle last week. You accept, even though sour plums always make your face try to invert itself. He laughs at your expression. You're lucky I didn't bring the ferment. After dinner, the house settles into its usual evening routine, half restful, half chaotic. Your little sister starts humming to herself while stacking clay beads into a tiny pyramid. Your mother gives up trying to brush crumbs off the floor and decides, quite reasonably, to deal with it tomorrow. Your father, sprawled across a woven mat, begins telling a story about the time he got caught in a dust storm and mistook a temple goat for the god Khnum. Everyone has heard this story at least 5 times, but no one interrupts him. It's tradition. You, meanwhile, are sent to top off the oil in the lamp. It's a small task, but one with high stakes. The last time someone forgot, the house plunged into full darkness and your brother screamed for a solid 2 minutes because he thought a beetle was whispering secrets to him. It was just a fig. The lamp burns low, casting a sleepy amber glow on the walls. You refill it carefully from the family's oil jar, the neck wrapped in old cloth to keep dust out. A little splash onto your fingers makes them slick and warm. You wipe them on your tunic and return the jar to its niche. Outside, the village begins to quiet. Distant voices murmur across mud-brick courtyards, accompanied by the soft bray of a donkey that has clearly seen things. You step out briefly to enjoy the cooler air. Overhead, the stars emerge one by one, glittering like lost jewelry. There's Orion, though here, the constellation is called Sa, associated with Osiris. You like the idea that even in the stars, gods are watching, waiting, gossiping. Tonight, you're sleeping on the roof. It's too hot inside, and anyway, the rooftop offers breezes, stars, and the occasional accidental spider. You gather your bedding, a mat, a light sheet, and that one pillow that's almost flat enough to qualify as historically accurate. Your brother joins you again, hauling up a pillow under one arm and a handful of roasted chickpeas in the other. You both lie back and watch the stars in silence for a while. Then comes the inevitable question from him, do you think we'll ever leave the village? You don't answer right away. Because it's a big question. Bigger than bread, bigger than monkey theft, bigger than fig-induced beetle hallucinations. Eventually you reply, maybe. But I think the world would miss us too much. He snorts, but he smiles too. As the evening cools into full night, the temple drums begin, slow, deep, distant. You can't see the temple from here, but you know the rhythm by heart. They beat them to guide the Ka, the spirit, back to the body during important rituals. Sometimes you wonder if they work on the living, too, guiding your restless thoughts back into place. Historians still argue whether these nightly rituals were strictly ceremonial or had deeper social meaning. Some believe they served as a kind of spiritual clock, regulating community time like a heartbeat in the dark. You shift on your mat, tucking one arm under your head and letting Y. The sun wakes you long before you're ready. It starts with a golden smear across your eyelids, then creeps into your dreams like an overly optimistic rooster. You groan, roll over, and promptly bump into your brother, who's drooling slightly onto the mat. The breeze has faded, and the rooftop now radiates the kind of gentle warmth that says, get up now, or start slow roasting like a date in a clay pot. You sit up, stretch, and blink at the shimmering horizon. The Nile glitters in the distance like it knows all your secrets but isn't telling. You run a hand through your sleep-tangled hair and yawn so wide it could swallow a scarab. Morning in the village arrives not with a bang, but with a slow, rhythmic stirring, grinding, sweeping, muttering. Courtyards open like flowers, and neighbors exchange greetings over low walls. Someone sneezes, loudly and with a dramatic flair that earns a few chuckles. Your mother is already downstairs, humming while mixing something thick and greenish in a jar. Celery paste, she says without looking up. For your face. The sun kissed you too hard yesterday. You obediently let her smear it across your nose and cheeks. It smells like vegetables and swamp water, but apparently, it keeps your skin from peeling off like a cursed scroll. Ancient Egyptians were famously ahead of their time in skincare. Modern spa menus would charge 2 goats and a chicken for half of this treatment. Historians still argue whether these herbal concoctions were purely cosmetic or part of religious purification. You figure it doesn't really matter if it works and stops your face from turning into pottery. After breakfast, flatbread, goat cheese, and a handful of grapes so wrinkled they might be contemplating retirement, you're handed today's mission: go fetch a replacement jar from the potter on the edge of the village. This would be a simple task, except the potter is notoriously eccentric. Think, has conversations with his kiln, eccentric. You set out with a satchel and a cautious optimism. The streets are already warm, the dust clinging to your ankles like needy toddlers. A couple of kids race past you playing senet with sticks and pebbles instead of an actual board. You dodge a goat with a 1,000-yard stare and pause at a vendor hawking lotus roots carved into the shape of tiny crocodiles. You're tempted, but focus. Pottery first, fun later. The potter, Padiaman, is exactly where you expect, elbow deep in clay, shirtless, barefoot, and muttering about symmetry. His workshop smells like damp earth and smoke. You wait until he finishes yelling at a pot that collapsed out of sheer laziness, then clear your throat. Need a new storage jar, you say, holding up the broken rim of the old one like a sad offering. He peers at it, then at you, then at the sky, as if consulting Ra himself. Round base. Flat. Decorative. Sturdy, you reply. Our uncle drops things. Ah, he nods gravely. The clumsy uncle model. I have just th. By midday, the heat is no longer a gentle presence, it's a demanding roommate, draped over everything, refusing to budge. The air hangs thick, pressing down like damp linen. You've retreated indoors, fanning yourself with a folded palm leaf and reconsidering every life choice that led to being born into the sunniest patch of Egypt. Your family has entered what can only be described as collective lizard mode. Everyone sprawls silently in the shade, conserving energy, blinking slowly. Your mother's only movement is swatting flies with the precision of someone who's turned it into a martial art. Even your father, usually full of dubious projects and lengthy metaphors about barley, has given up trying to do anything productive. He's lying flat on the floor, murmuring to a crack in the ceiling as if it might answer him. Your little sister, bored beyond words, begins tracing hieroglyphs in the dust with her toe. She draws a bird, then a loaf, then what might be a hippo, or might be a sideways onion. You don't ask. This is when your mother suggests the one activity that somehow combines movement, tradition, and the possibility of baked goods, a visit to your great-aunt. You sigh dramatically but rise. Everyone knows the rules. When Aunt Nebbit requests company, you go, even if it means crossing town in the heat, bearing gifts, and bracing yourself for 70 uninterrupted minutes of old-person wisdom and suspiciously specific advice. You pack a bundle of dried fish, a gourd of date beer, and a fan made of reeds that falls apart every third stroke. Your brother volunteers to come too, probably out of equal parts boredom and fear of missing gossip. Outside, the heat slaps you like a baked brick. The streets shimmer. Somewhere, a dog gives up chasing its own tail and lies down with a long-suffering sigh. You pass neighbors doing the same thing you are. Visiting relatives, trading food, sharing news, and greet them with the practiced politeness of desert diplomacy. Along the way, you cross the open square where a group of men are repairing a wheel. One of them calls out, "Careful, street crocodiles today." You glance at the sand, deadpan. No crocs. Just an old sandal and a feather. Still, you laugh. It's the kind of dry humor that makes the day bearable. When you reach Aunt Nebbit's house, she's already waiting in the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. She waves you in with a dramatic sigh. "Well," she says, "took you long enough. I've already spoken to the wall twice today and it's starting to answer back." Inside, her home is cool and shadowy. She keeps bundles of herbs hanging from the rafters and has at least 4 cats, all of whom appear deeply judgmental. You sit on a woven stool that squeaks ominously, and she pours a thick liquid from a jar. "Fig and carob juice," she says. "It's good for your bowels and your dreams." You take a cautious sip. It tastes like regret and raisins. Your brother pretends to enjoy it and gets rewarded with a papy. The next morning begins exactly as you expect. The sun's fiery breath through the cracks in the mud brick walls wakes you with an urgency that suggests you've slept through some sort of divine appointment. You groan and shift. A single gust of wind raises the dust just enough to tickle your nose, and you sneeze into your pillow. The morning ritual is as ingrained as the village's daily rhythm. Your father calls for you to help with the grain. You're used to the dull scrape of the mortar and pestle by now, its smooth stone surface fitting comfortably beneath your palm like a well-worn pair of sandals. The grinding process is simple, but somehow calming. The repetitive motion, the scent of crushed wheat, the rhythm of your movements, it's like the pulse of the world has slowed, reminding you that the day, however long, will eventually end. But before you can even begin thinking about the grain, there's something more pressing. Something you can't avoid. You spot a stray donkey nibbling at the edges of the barley patch, your father's barley patch. And that's trouble. Donkeys in barley fields are like thieves at a baker's shop. Unacceptable. You sigh. "Father, the donkey's back." He looks up, his weathered face twisting in an expression of barely concealed annoyance. Again, he mutters under his breath. It's a familiar complaint. A neighbor's donkey has developed a taste for his barley, and as much as your father might find it charming, this is no time for indulgence. He grabs a stick and goes after it with the precision of someone who's had to do this many, many times before. You shake your head, stifling a smile. The donkey looks mildly offended but doesn't seem inclined to hurry off. A few determined taps with the stick, and the animal retreats, chewing its cud in silent protest. With that crisis averted, it's back to the grain. Your family is so used to the repetitive tasks of daily life that they no longer need words to communicate. The meal is simple and necessary. The bread is shaped, the pots are cleaned, the goats are milked, and the little things, the tiny rituals that stitch the days together, continue without interruption. You take the opportunity to run outside to the market square, your sandals slapping against the dry earth, your breath a little too quick for comfort. There's an edge of excitement in the air today, something different, people are gathering, their murmurs punctuated by the clang of metal. Something is happening. The cause of the commotion turns out to be a new shipment of incense from the highlands. The merchant is unloading his goods with a flair, gesturing wildly at the sacks of herbs, spices, and dried flowers. The air smells rich with the sweet pungency of frankincense, myrrh, and something else that's new to you, perhaps dried lavender or saffron. Whatever it is, it immediately catches your attention. You stand there for a moment, inhaling deeply, trying to identify the unfamiliar fragrance. The market, as always. You've learned to tell time by the sun's angles, the way it arcs across the sky and dips behind the distant hills. The hours are less precise here, not measured in minutes or ticking clocks but by the way the shadows stretch and shrink. As the sun begins to rise again, painting the world in muted golds and browns, you know today will be much like yesterday, and yet, maybe it won't be. You've learned never to underestimate the day, especially not in this village. As usual, the first sounds of the morning are the rhythmic calls of the town crier. He's a man with a voice like dry reeds in the wind, and while you're not entirely sure what he's saying, you know he's announcing something. Whether it's the time for the market to open, or a call for the men to gather at the river, it's hard to say. His words swirl in the early morning air, trailing away as quickly as they arrive. Your father, his face creased with the familiarity of his many years, grunts and shakes his head. No rest for the weary, he mutters. His day is already stretching before him, full of work that can never truly be finished, tending to the barley, making sure the goats don't wander too far, repairing the fences. Each task is like a pebble dropped into the stillness of the morning. It ripples outward but never really settles. You've seen him do it all your life. After a quick breakfast, bread, a few dates, some goat's milk, you make your way outside to help with the early morning chores. Your sister follows closely behind, carrying a small basket, likely filled with nothing but the most dangerous of items, an empty bottle and a spoon. For some reason, she seems convinced these are essentials for the day's adventures. The sky above is wide and unmarred by clouds. The air is still cool, but you know it won't stay that way for long. Already, the first heat is rising from the earth, a gentle promise of the hours to come. You walk to the barley field, your sandals kicking up little puffs of dust with every step. The earth is soft, but it's already beginning to harden in places, cracks forming where the moisture has long since evaporated. You notice the donkey is back, standing just at the edge of the barley, eyeing it with the kind of judgment that only an animal can muster. It chews slowly, unconcerned, as if you're not even there. You approach quietly, just as your father taught you, trying not to startle it. But just as you're about to tap its side, a shrill voice rings out. Stop! Your sister, no more than a child in her excitement, waves her spoon in the air like a sword. The donkey lifts its head and stares at her, unimpressed. The situation suddenly seems absurd. A grown person chasing off a donkey with a stick seems normal. A child with a spoon? Ridiculous. You try not to laugh, but it escapes anyway. She glares at you, a mix of indignation and determination on her face. It works, she says firmly. You don't have to do it all the time, but when you do, it works. You know. The sun rises once again, but today there's something different in the air. It's the quiet before the storm, the stillness that precedes a change you can't quite predict. The morning feels pregnant with possibility, yet you know that, like every other day, it will soon settle into a rhythm you've come to expect. You finish your morning tasks with the same routine, feeding the goats, checking the barley, and, of course, chasing off the ever-ambitious donkey, but today, there's a sense of restlessness in you. Perhaps it's just the heat of the day, but something is tugging at your consciousness, a feeling that you're standing at the edge of something that's about to happen. The village is quieter than usual. The market, which is normally bustling by this time, is oddly empty. You've learned to watch for these small signs, the ones that tell you when things are shifting, when the world is quietly shifting its course. It's not something you can explain, it's more of a knowing, a gut feeling. And as the sun climbs higher in the sky, you find yourself drawn to the town center. When you arrive, you see the cause of the strange stillness. There's a large group of people gathered near the well, speaking in low murmurs. There's a quiet tension in the air, the kind that can only mean something significant is afoot. You approach carefully, your curiosity piquing. One of the elders sees you coming and beckons you over with a knowing glance. Something's happened, he says in a low voice. Something we weren't expecting. You feel a flicker of unease. What is it, you ask, though you don't really need to. He hesitates, looking around as though searching for the right words. A visitor. From far beyond the horizon. The words land like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples of uncertainty through your mind. Visitors from beyond the horizon, strangers, travelers, outsiders, are rare in this quiet village. They don't come often, and when they do, it's not always a cause for celebration. The elder continues, his voice just above a whisper. Word has it, this one brings news of things we've never heard of. Tales of distant lands and powerful kingdoms. They say he's traveled far and wide. He's seen things that would make your head spin. You try to imagine what such a person might look like, someone who has seen the world in a way you never have. It's a difficult concept to grasp. This village, with its narrow dirt paths and humble stone homes, feels so isolated from the grand sweep of history, like a quiet pocket untouched by the dust and noise of the world. But now, you find yourself caught in the gravity of this news. A visitor, someone who has lived the kind of life that's nothing like your own. Someone who has stepped outside of this small world and into the larger, wilder one that exists just beyond the horizon. What kind of stories does this stranger carry with him? What might he have seen, what might he know that you haven't even begun to dream of? The day after the visitor's departure feels oddly empty. You can't quite explain it, but there's a space inside you, a sort of quiet void that his stories seem to have left behind. The village resumes its daily rhythm, but it's as if everyone is moving through the motions a little slower, a little more thoughtfully, as if still digesting the tales of faraway lands and distant kings. You wake up before the sun, as always. The world is still dark, the stars hanging above in their eternal dance. The early morning chill is sharp on your skin, and you wrap yourself in the worn linen of your cloak as you make your way outside. The smell of earth and dew is heavy in the air, and the silence is almost sacred, as if the world itself is still holding its breath. The morning is the same as any other, but there's an underlying tension, the faintest awareness that something has changed, though no one will say it aloud. The chores of the day begin as usual. You head to the barley field, still trying to shake off the strange, lingering feeling that the visitor's words have left behind. Your hands move automatically, gathering the grain and checking for pests, but your thoughts keep drifting back to his stories of great empires and towering cities. You imagine what it would be like to step into one of those cities, to see the grand temples and the golden statues, to hear the sounds of 1,000 different tongues in the air. You can't help but wonder, is the world truly so different out there, or is it just that the stories are enough to make it seem like it is? The visitor's words were full of promise, of things you've never seen and likely will never see. But you can't shake the feeling that his stories, wonderful and strange as they were, are more a reflection of his own desires than a glimpse into the reality of those faraway lands. As you move through the barley fields, the sky slowly brightens, and the temperature rises. It's going to be another hot day, the kind that wraps itself around you like a heavy blanket. But today, it feels even hotter. You can feel the heat in your bones, the air thick and unyielding. It's the kind of heat that makes everything slow down, that pushes you to seek the shade, to find any excuse to stop moving for a while. You look up at the sky, the sun climbing steadily, and something strange happens. It's almost as if the world is stretching out before you, expanding in a way that you've never experienced before. The distant horizon, once just a far-off line of dusty earth, now seems impossibly far. It feels as though the boundaries of the village are slipping away, and you're standing on the edge of something much bigger than you ever thought possible. You shake your head, trying to dismiss the thought. This is your life, this village, this land. Your father's farm, your mother's kitchen, your sister's endless adventures with spoons. It's all you've ever known, and it's enough. The thought of leaving it all behind, of stepping. The following morning comes without fanfare, as the days tend to do when you've spent your whole life in the same place. The rooster crows, the sun climbs, and the familiar rhythm of life continues unabated. But even as the first light touches the earth, you can't help but feel that the world is subtly different. There's a slight shift in the air, like a musical note out of tune, and for the first time in years, you realize that you're standing at the crossroads of something you can't quite define. The heat of the day presses down on you, though you're used to it by now. The sweat sticks to your back as you make your way through the familiar chores, but there's a restlessness in your bones that you can't ignore. The stories the visitor told have become like a gentle hum in the back of your mind, nudging at your thoughts as you move through your tasks. Your hands move almost without thinking as you prepare the animals for the day. Feeding the goats, checking the horses, and looking after the small garden where you grow beans and peas. There's comfort in the routine, in the familiarity of these actions. But today, everything feels a little different, as if the weight of the world is pulling at you just a bit more than usual. You can't stop thinking about the visitor. His words echo in your mind, each sentence carrying a promise of something grand and unknown. The distant lands, the towering kingdoms, the rivers of gold, it all feels so far away, so impossible to imagine. And yet, in your quiet moments, you find yourself dreaming of them. What would it be like to travel those far-off roads? To stand in the bustling marketplaces of places you've only heard whispers of. The heat presses in around you as you finish your work for the day, the sun now high in the sky. You wipe the sweat from your brow, feeling a strange longing stir inside you. It's the kind of feeling you've never known before, a desire to step beyond the familiar, to see the world with your own eyes instead of through the lens of someone else's story. But as the day stretches on, that feeling starts to fade, replaced by the steady, reassuring certainty of home. The village is where you belong. It's where you've always been, and where you'll always return. The farm, the family, the slow, steady life, it's all you've ever known, and in a way, it's all you need. As you sit down for the evening meal, the quiet hum of conversation around you does little to calm the unease that lingers beneath the surface. Your family is talking about the coming harvest, about the weather, about the small but steady changes in the village. But your mind is elsewhere, lost in the stories of places and people you've never met. The seed the visitor planted in your mind has begun to sprout, and now it's hard to ignore it. You think about the great empires he spoke of, the cities where the walls seemed to touch the sky. You think about the kings and queens who ruled over vast territories, their names whisper. The sun rises slowly the next morning, just as it always has. The rooster calls his familiar greeting to the dawn, and the farm begins to stir with the usual quiet energy. Yet, today feels different. Maybe it's the anticipation building in your chest, the sense that something is about to shift, something you can't fully comprehend but know, deep down, is coming. For the first time in a long while, you're awake before the rooster, the morning still dim with the remnants of night. The stars are faintly visible as you stand at the edge of the small hill near your home, staring out over the land you've known your whole life. The earth beneath your feet feels solid, unchanging, like the steady pulse of the world itself. You can hear the faint rustle of the wind as it pushes through the trees, and for a moment, it feels as though the entire world is holding its breath, waiting for you to decide. The birds are silent, and even the usual hum of insects seems to have quieted in the early morning. It's as if nature itself understands the quiet tension that has settled over you. This morning, the thought of the village and the farm no longer brings comfort in the same way. It's not that you no longer love this place, it will always be part of you, but the visitor's stories have shown you the world beyond, and now it feels impossibly small. What once seemed like a vast and unmovable landscape now feels like a small room with a door you didn't know was there. You think of the visitor's parting words, "The world is much bigger than this place, young one." But sometimes, it takes stepping away to truly see that. His voice echoes in your mind as you stand there, staring at the distant hills that surround your home. You don't know what to make of his words, but they've burrowed deep within you, taking root in a way you hadn't expected. The day stretches before you like a road with no clear end. It's filled with all the familiar tasks, tending to the animals, working in the fields, checking the grain, but none of them seem as important as they once did. You feel detached, as if you're on the verge of something, and yet you don't know what it is. There's a faint pressure behind your eyes, the sense that if you just wait long enough, something will happen. But life goes on. You find yourself working with the same steady pace you've always had, your hands moving through the motions, but your mind somewhere else. The thought of stepping beyond the village is still there, nudging at you, but now there's also the quiet question, what would you leave behind? The farm, your family, the life you've always known, how could you walk away from all of that? But at the same time, there's a deeper question, how could you stay, now that you know there's more out there? The sun climbs higher, the heat of the day beginning to settle in. The familiar rhythm of your tasks continues, but something about them seems strange now. The goats bleat in their usual way, and the horses pull a. The first light of dawn seeps through the small cracks in your window, bringing with it the promise of a new day. You stir beneath the covers, still caught in the haze of dreams. For a moment, it's hard to tell if the thoughts of the day before were real or just another dream of distant lands, of palaces and kings. You can hear the world outside waking up, the soft caw of crows, the rustling of leaves in the morning breeze. But something inside you has shifted. The quiet ache to leave, to see the world, has grown louder. As you rise, stretching and rubbing the sleep from your eyes, the normalcy of the morning presses in. The scent of the earth, the familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath your feet, it all feels the same. The weight of routine wraps around you like an old, worn blanket. You know what comes next, feeding the animals, checking the fields, preparing breakfast, but today, the motions feel different. The rhythm of the village seems less comforting and more confining, like a gentle cage that's been surrounding you for years. Your hands move through the motions of your morning chores as if they know what they're doing, but your thoughts wander. What would it be like to step outside of this? To feel the wind in your hair and walk down a road that leads to places unknown? The visitor's words have become a constant hum in your mind, urging you to consider the possibility, to imagine the life you've never lived but always sensed was out there. As the morning continues, you can feel the pull inside you growing stronger. It's a quiet urgency, a beckoning that doesn't speak of grand adventures or riches but of something simpler, something that feels like freedom. You've spent your whole life tethered to this land, to the seasons and the cycles of the farm. But what if there's more? What if there's a whole world out there waiting to be seen? The thought of leaving feels strange, almost foreign, but not in a bad way. It's the kind of strange that carries with it a sense of wonder and possibility. You think about the journey ahead, the unknowns that lie beyond the hills, the uncertainty of what could happen next. The world outside your village is full of stories, full of people whose lives are as different from yours as they are the same. You walk outside to check on the animals, the early morning light casting long shadows across the land. The familiar scent of the earth, rich and damp from the night's dew, fills your senses. It feels grounding, as if the earth itself is urging you to remember where you came from, what you're leaving behind. But it also feels like a starting point, a place that will always be there, no matter how far you go. As you walk the perimeter of the fields, the rustling of the wind through the tall grasses seems to speak to you. You know what this place means, what it's always meant. It's home, it's safe, it's stable. But you can't help but wonder if there's something more. There are places you've heard of, cities you